In the heart of a raging storm, Jackson's flashlight cuts through the rain-soaked darkness. He's racing to save Leah, the trapped leopard whose fierce eyes burn with wild desperation. The forest trembles with thunder, every second a fight between life and death. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The dawn was barely breaking when the first saws bit into the ancient trunks, the echo slicing through the stillness like a scream. Jackson Miller's crew, clad in neon safety vests and wielding chainsaws and axes, were oblivious to the weight of their intrusion. Each fallen tree was a symbol of progress to Jackson, a step closer to the ecotourism cabins he envisioned, nestled among the pines and cedars. In his mind, this was not devastation but revival, opening a path for people to reconnect with nature, to breathe fresh air, and awaken their spirits in the wild. His rhetoric was polished and rehearsed, an armor against the gnawing doubt that sometimes crept in. But in the thick shadows, Leah's amber eyes burned with fierce vigilance. Her sleek body, powerful and lithe, blended seamlessly with the mottled sunlight filtering through the canopy. She was a ghost of the forest, a predator born from countless generations of survival. Every footstep Jackson's crew took on her land was an act of war, a betrayal of the sacred rhythm she lived by. For Leah, this forest was not just a territory, but the cradle of her lineage. Here, her cubs learned the art of silence and strength, the cruel ballet of hunt and evasion. The chainsaw's roar was a thunderous affront, a cacophony that shattered the delicate balance of life she had fought so hard to maintain. Her muscles tensed beneath her tawny coat, a primal fury simmering beneath calm control. The scent of foreign sweat and oil invaded her senses, alien and hostile. Leah's heart pounded, each beat fueling the rage and desperation that surged through her veins. This was no longer a quiet warning, but a war cry in the making. Her world was unraveling, thread by thread, and she could not afford to lose it. Jackson, for all his ambition and bravado, remained blind to the true cost of his vision. He saw only opportunity, a land waiting to be shaped, a future to be built. Yet as he faced Leah's circling presence, the raw intensity of her gaze struck a chord deep inside him. Here was not a beast, but a mother, a protector with stakes as real as his own. In that charged silence, Jackson felt an unexpected flicker of empathy, a fragile connection bridging two very different worlds. But Leah's warning was clear, her patience razor thin. This was her domain, and the intruders had crossed a line that would not be forgiven. The forest held its breath, awaiting the next move, one that would decide whether coexistence was possible or if the clash would escalate beyond redemption. Jackson stood on the edge of the clearing, the lingering scent of freshly cut pine needles and sawdust hanging heavy in the damp air. The chainsaws had fallen silent, an uneasy ceasefire born from his reluctant decision to pause construction. He'd called in reinforcements, wildlife experts, biologists, conservationists who knew the forest in ways he could never pretend to understand. Among them was Emma Collins, whose fiery devotion to protecting the wilderness radiated from every word she spoke. Emma's eyes burned with quiet urgency as she laid bare the stark reality. Leah was not just any leopard, but one of the last in this region, a survivor against a tide of poaching and habitat destruction that had already wiped out so many of her kind. She described how the forest was shrinking piece by piece, suffocated by human expansion and greed, how these predators, once kings of the wild, were now pushed to desperate extremes, forced into dangerous clashes with humans just trying to live their lives. Jackson listened, his thoughts torn between the weight of Emma's warnings and his own stubborn hopes. He was not a villain in this story. His vision was born of a sincere desire to save his small town from economic decline, to build a future where his daughter Sophie could thrive, where she could follow her dreams of photographing the wild without leaving home. He believed, fiercely, that he could balance development with conservation, that there was a path where Leah's world and his project could coexist. But the truth gnawed at him. Every day that work stopped was a day lost. Every compromise seemed to cost more than he was willing to pay. The forest around Leah was shrinking with a cruel, relentless logic. Trails were rerouted, thickets raised, and silent boundaries crossed without consent. The tension that had settled over the area was palpable, a silent war between survival and ambition. One evening, word came like a shockwave. Leah had attacked a poacher caught red-handed, tangled in snares meant for smaller prey. The man survived but was badly injured. News spread swiftly, fueling a wildfire of fear and anger in the nearby town. Voices rose in the market and around kitchen tables, fractured into two camps: those who blamed Jackson for inviting danger into their lives, and those who saw Leah as a tragic victim of encroachment who deserved protection. Jackson felt the pressure crushing him from all sides, his frustration erupting beneath a veneer of reason. Leah's presence was a constant, volatile reminder that nature could not be tamed so easily. Removing her was no simple solution. It would be a betrayal of everything he claimed to value. Yet every concession felt like a defeat, every meeting a battle fought on shifting ground. The conflict tore at him, stripping away pretense until only raw, painful truth remained. This was not just about land or money, but about the fragile, unforgiving intersection where human dreams collided with the wild's primal will to survive. Jackson sat in the dim glow of the cabin's study, the storm outside thrashing relentless sheets of rain against the window pane, a wild symphony echoing the turmoil within his chest. The plans sprawled across the table were no longer mere blueprints of development, but delicate blueprints of survival, intricate designs stitched together with hope and cautious reverence. Beside him, Emma's voice was steady, yet charged with fierce determination as she outlined the emerging vision. A protected corridor carved through the wilderness, a lifeline for Leah and the creatures like her, wrapped in the latest satellite tracking technology and supported by community education programs that could transform wary neighbors into vigilant stewards. This was no longer about domination, about bulldozers and cabins imposing on a silenced forest. It was a fragile accord, a promise to coexist, forged in the crucible of conflict and tempered by newfound respect. Jackson's fingers traced the edges of Leah's territory on the digital map, noting every ridge and river critical to her survival. The corridor would buffer her world, keeping intrusive footsteps at bay while opening a window for the world beyond. Eco-tourists, photographers, children who could learn to love and protect rather than fear and destroy. It was audacious, maybe even foolhardy, but it was the only path forward. Then came the night that crystallized everything, the storm that battered the forest with merciless fury, tearing branches from ancient trees and flooding lowland trails. When Emma's urgent call came, Jackson didn't hesitate. Leah was caught in a hunter's cruel snare, miles from her sanctuary, vulnerable and desperate. Risking life and limb, they plunged into the tempest, the rain slick and blinding, the forest a maze of shadow and menace. Every step was a gamble, every movement a whisper against the roar of the storm and the snap of twisted metal binding the wild heart of the forest. When they finally reached her, Leah's golden eyes, fierce yet wounded, locked with Jackson's. In that raw, electric moment, the line between human and wild blurred, the instinct to fight yielding to a fragile thread of trust. Their hands worked swiftly, cutting through the cruel traps, the pulse of Leah's rapid breathing mixing with their own. She didn't flee when freed, didn't turn away in fear. Instead, a cautious acceptance lingered, a silent acknowledgement that not all who came from the other side of the trees were enemies. This act, dangerous, tender, shifted the battle lines. It was not surrender, but a new beginning. From that night, the project was reborn, no longer a mere economic venture, but a living testament to resilience and respect. Jackson and Emma's partnership deepened, fueled by shared conviction and the quiet understanding that the future depended on balance. Their work kindled a spark in the town. Conversations shifted from fear to fascination, from suspicion to stewardship. Leah's presence became a beacon, her fierce roar a rallying cry not of menace but of hope, a reminder that survival demanded unity, not conquest. Jackson, once the intruder with sawdust on his boots, became a guardian of the wild, his vision forever changed by the creature whose fate was entwined with his own. The alliance forged in rain and risk transcended boundaries, proving that courage and compassion could rewrite even the oldest stories, turning anger into triumph, conflict into coexistence.